What's the deal with hot dogs? This is Dive, a podcast about where our Google searches take us. I'm Dan, and I'm here with my friend Cody.
Yo!
And Cody.
Yes?
Processed foods are the devil.
The devil?
And the most processed of processed foods could only be the hot dog.
Bum, bum, bum! Or is that supposed to be in like a minor key? Bum, bum, bum!
There you go, yeah.
Yeah.
A little more solemn.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's bad out there, man.
It's bad in the world of hot dogs and processed foods.
If you're trying to celebrate your July 4th, your Memorial Day, your summer barbecue, whatever you might be celebrating, you're stuffing your face with salt, nitrates, meat slurry, maybe some pink slime.
Dan, stop talking that way. You're getting me hot and bothered.
Okay. Mechanically separated meat.
Oh, baby.
I was just thinking about hot dogs, man. And I
As
don't
one
know.
does.
As one does, yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know about it.
But don't you know about it?
It's this deep tradition, this deep-rooted, like, almost cultural passion we have around baseball and hot dogs and everything else. But I don't know.
Listen, whatever you're about to say about hot dogs, I want it for the record.
Okay.
I firmly stand behind hot dogs. And I grew up truly believing, that it was un-American if you didn't have a hot dog on the 4th of July. And I'm not using that as an anecdote. I thought that I would be considered an American if I did not have a hot dog on the 4th of July.
Wow.
So carry on.
All right. My beef, get it, with hot dogs. And I'm going to warn everyone right up front that this might not be an episode you want to listen to while you're eating a hot dog. Because there's a lot of words in here.
Wait, do people usually listen to our podcast while they're eating hot dogs?
I hope so. If you can send us a video or picture of you eating a hot dog, HOTDROPDive@gmail.com while listening to our show, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'd like to see it, I guess. Is that weird?
No. I am on board.
All right.
Free sticker.
When I say words like pink slime and mechanically processed meat and meat slurry, that doesn't turn you off at all?
Not even a little bit.
Do you know what mechanically separated meat is?
I'd love for you to tell me.
They're literally forcing ground beef, pork, mutton, turkey, or chicken through a high-pressure sieve and to separate the bone from the edible meat tissue. They're taking the carcass left over after manual removal of meat from the bones and then forcing the slurry through a sieve under pressure, separating the rest of the meat from the bone and leaving a slurry in its wake.
When do we get to the gross part?
Okay. I'm done. Bone marrow, skin, nerves, blood vessels. No? Doesn't do it for you?
Sounds like flavor to me.
Okay.
Take me to Flavor Town, Dano.
Hell yeah, brother. Oh, God.
I would like to point out that I read in my research that mechanically separated beef is no longer allowed in hot dogs.
Really?
Yes. So for whatever reason, and I think it was like the extensive amounts of different nervous systems and things like that they would be cranking through the CFA, that food, health, and safety people essentially said, like, this doesn't actually benefit anybody. It's a pain, so you can't put it in hot dogs anymore. Interesting.
So there was a similar thing along with pink slime. Do you remember that? Right around 2012.
I do.
There was the whole, uproar, I should say, about pink slime.
And McDonald's chicken nuggets.
McDonald's chicken nuggets, right. So in 2012, ABC News did a series about pink slime, and we should mention that pink slime is pretty similar. It's a meat byproduct used as an additive to ground beef and beef-based processed meats. So it's like a filler. It adds additional fat content. It reduces the overall fat content of ground beef. And so there was this whole news story where it's like, I remember seeing very distinctly on the news, like them making pink slime, and it just looked like soft serve ice cream.
It literally
just,
looked like
come out of
half
the
melted
machine.
strawberry ice cream. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, it's was used in pet food and cooking oil and other things like that. But there was this big, expose piece. What's the word? Exposure? I don't know. A big news story about them exposing the meat industry for putting pink slime and everything and how bad it is.
There's like The Jungle Part 2, but on TV.
Exactly. Did you have to read that, by the way?
I didn't have to read it, no, but I read it as an adult.
Oh, wow. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever revisited any of the books that I had to read in high school.
Well, I didn't read any of them when I was in high school. So when I got done and I chose to read on my own, I went, I should probably read those things.
And I definitely wasn't
Thanks,
old enough to
Mrs.
appreciate
Nolan.
it. So there was this big lawsuit against ABC for false claims about what pink slime was, yada, yada, yada. ABC had settled the suit. They settled for at least $177 million from that news story, and it's one of the largest amounts ever paid out in a media defamation case in the U.S. Pretty nuts.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty wild.
That's got to be embarrassing to ABC News.
I know, right? Because it is gross.
They were like trying to get a breaking story about
Yeah.
something important. No, it's pink slime that you were wrong about.
Yeah. And so meat slurry is the last thing I want to talk about. It's reconstituted meat or emulsified meat. It's a liquefied meat product that contains fewer fats, pigments, and less myoglobin than unprocessed dark meats. I don't know what all that means, but ultimately it's just grinding up the used carcass and throwing it in the casings. And there's your hot dog. Maybe add a little salt and pepper.
I'm cool. Cumin. Don't forget cumin.
Paprika as well.
None of this is turning me off to hot dogs.
Really? I would say by this
Yeah.
time you'd be like, I don't know about this.
Man, they still taste really good. Especially, you ever see those Ballpark Frank commercials with Michael Jordan in the 90s?
I don't think I have.
Look it up sometime. Anybody who's listening, look it up. Michael Jordan had Ballpark Frank commercials, and he put mustard on his hot dog so pristinely.
Oh, yeah.
It was unmatched by any human in history.
Wow.
And
that's a
for
bold
probably
claim.
the ages of 7 to 10, me and my sisters would always try to put it on as meticulously as Michael Jordan.
And it was strictly just mustard, nothing else?
Nothing else.
Wow.
I mean, like, onions don't count as a condiment. Like, out of sauce-like things, only mustard goes on hot dogs. Different kinds of mustard, sure. I would also allow for dill relish, not sweet relish.
Oh, yeah. See, that is the unsung hero of the relish family. Dill relish?
Yeah, people don't
It's
really
incredible.
use dill relish. Like, what are
Why?
you, animals?
Right. It's so delicious.
Yeah, it's so good.
Anyway, there's just a lot of stuff wrong with hot dogs. I do think they're delicious, but I just can't come to grips with what's actually in them, even though I know after doing this episode, I'm still going to be indulging myself in some delicious Zweigels, friend of the show.
Oh, Zweigels.
I mean, I don't actually have them, but I would still eat them.
I mean, they don't even sell Zweigels in your area.
They do, actually. We have a Wegmans out here. They're delicious.
Oh, they would then. Okay.
Yeah. They're the only hot dog that has that crisp crunch when you bite in and the popping open of the casing.
Well, where does that come from? Why is the casing so delicious?
Well, because the casing is made out of animal intestines.
All right.
Oh, God. Sometimes plastic, actually. Did you know that?
Not in Zweigels. Don't you?
No.
Don't even.
I will not slander the good Zweigels name.
Why would they do that in plastic?
Yeah,
What company is doing that with plastic?
Pretty nasty. They must be sausages or hot dogs that you have to take out of the casing, because I can't imagine plastic being something that you can eat.
Yeah, that sounds pretty gross. In that case, I would not stand behind hot dogs.
Okay, good. I'm glad that there's a line you draw. It's not the organs, it's not the bone marrow or blood vessels or blood or whatever else it might be. It's actually the plastic that you draw your line at. I like that.
100%.
It's good to have principles.
Yeah.
So if we want to talk about hot dogs, and I do, you have to talk about sausage.
Obviously.
Obvi. And sausage being ground meat, pork, beef, veal, salt, spices, flavorings, all of these things are hot dogs, are in hot dogs. It's like the same thing, essentially. It's just a version of a sausage. You grind that all up, stick it in a casing, traditionally made of animal intestine, and then you hang it up. Hang it up for a couple months because it's its own food preservation technique. That's what it's all about. It's not about cooking it to perfection as soon as you make it. It's about the olden times. Preserving your food to get through the summer and the winter and whenever else you might not have fresh meat. So it actually made sense back then. You could smoke it or you could just hang it up.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what a processed food is, right?
Pretty
like
much.
A processed food is like anything that's been like changed so that it makes it taste better or it extends its shelf life.
Yeah, and I would probably say it's the second one. Like because I think of processed foods being loaded with preservatives.
100%. Yeah.
That lasts for a while. Like Spam, like it'll survive a nuclear fallout or whatever. Spam and cockroaches, right?
A nuclear one or a nuclear one?
Nuclear. A nuclear.
I think that's pretty important to note, though, right? Like, yes, hot dogs are the Adolf Hitler of the processed food world.
Wow.
But
true,
I also think that like it's not all bad because processed food goes back thousands of years. Processed food is literally about the longevity of food to preserve food longer. You can go back to the Egyptians and see that they were entombed with like salted meats, things that they could take to the afterlife with them because of how it was perceived as being such a long journey.
I think they also, I remember there was some news story, like they found olive oil from, like inside a tomb that was technically still be eaten, or maybe it was wine.
It was honey. It was honey.
They
found honey. Yep.
That's what it was. And that's not really processed food necessarily, but
no,
right.
Honey, I think is naturally that way.
Yeah. Which honey itself, we should do an episode on honey. That's just fascinating to me.
They also found butter in like a bog in Europe, and apparently that was still edible.
Wow.
Actually, about like 70% of our entire diets fall within having processed foods in them. So we can't have this perception necessarily that all processed foods are bad. The milk that we drink is a processed food. The bread that we eat is a processed food. Unless you're making your own fresh pasta is a processed food. And so we can't be that quick to assume all processed foods are the devil.
Well, you're making a strong point because you're naming some of the most delicious things on this
I know
planet.
I am. I've done my research.
Can I just say something about milk real quick?
Absolutely.
Because once I read this, it completely turned me off to milk. So if you really like milk from cows,
I drank milk today.
I would say close your ears. Because once I realized that the milk in the jug isn't necessarily milk from one cow, it's in fact milk from thousands of cows all mixed together, that just completely turned me off.
Why is that?
I don't know. Just the fact that I know that like so many cows' udders were milked for this one jug, and it's all mixed in one giant vat. And although it is pasteurized,
I think it's weird enough that we're drinking the milk of another animal. But like, I'm not about to go to the store and buy a bunch of breast milk.
Right? Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
So. I'm dunking my Oreos in something.
Oh yeah.
I can't get hung up on the number of cows.
I feel like it's only fitting that I do this right now.
I need a goddamn beer.
Need a goddamn can of breast milk. Yeah. No. It is weird, isn't it? That we drink the juice of another animal.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's also so delicious.
It is pretty good.
And it prevents rickets in young boys.
That's right. Vitamin D deficiency is an epidemic.
Hypervitaminosis D also causes you to be angry and vomit.
Irritable. Anyway, what were we talking about?
We were talking about processed foods. And so I started to Google like processed foods and the history of processed foods. And what I came to isn't like the modern equivalent of where processed foods kind of got their start was actually with Napoleon Bonaparte.
Whoa.
Yeah. So when he was fighting, he had, I think it was like 20,000 Franks under his command or something like that. And what he needed was a way to feed everybody. And he didn't have enough salted or cured meats to go around and feed everyone. And so he put up a reward for anybody who could feed his army in a way that was helpful to him and didn't cost a ton of money for him. Because, he was busy being exiled and stuff.
Right. Yep. Makes sense.
There was a man named Nicholas Appert who took on Napoleon's challenge. And after about 15 years, introduced a method about heat processing food in glass jars, which led to the result of canning.
What year are we
So
talking
this-
here?
1790s.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, I was like, holy shit, canning's been around for a long time. And then I was like, holy shit, they didn't invent canning until 1795?
Right?
That is like it is like a world staple, is like canned or jarred food, right?
Yeah.
So this guy figured out how to preserve food inside of glass jars that he sealed with wax and corks.
Whoa.
He sealed them and then he boiled them, and then it worked.
The number of times that he must have tried and failed, and how sick he
100%.
must have made himself.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
Considering the fact that his techniques are no longer considered to be even safe, it worked. It worked. He didn't know the science behind it, and he in fact thought that preserving food was all about taking air out of the jars.
Wow.
Which we know now has nothing to do with it, and it's about specific things need to reach a specific temperature for a certain amount of time to kill off any of the bad bacteria that produces spoiling or causes spoiling.
And so that's pasteurization, right?
Part of it is pasteurization, yes. And so what he didn't even know that in 1810, Peter Durand introduced unsealable tin cans. And so this wasn't until 1810, which is around the same time that they actually figured out the science behind why it worked. So for 15 years, people around the world or in that region of the world were canning things, not knowing the science behind it,
Wow.
not understanding how it worked. That's crazy. That's
That is
nuts.
crazy.
Helped feed the Napoleonic troops.
Was that a good thing overall, though?
You know what? That's European history. I have no idea.
We don't.
Any
learn
of you
that.
Brits, if you could just, let us know, scold us a little bit, let us know. That'd be great.
I feel like that's the case with a lot of just like science and human experimentation, right? Like we don't actually know why things work the way they work, but we just do it and it seems to be good. So we keep doing it that way.
Yeah. It's actually, so John Mason of the Mason canning, like mason jars.
Yeah.
In 1858 was the first person to invent the glass container with the screw-on lid, like the threaded lid.
Wow.
And so we went from 1795 to 1858, going from corks and paraffin wax to threaded lids that were airtight.
I'm just amazed that we didn't die off as a culture.
It's
without
just so weird
refrigerators.
how all of this progresses, because it wasn't until the late 1800s that William Charles Ball and his brothers got into the jar business, and now they bought up everybody else around them, and the Ball Jarring Company is like a monopoly apparently in the jarring business.
That's the first time I've realized I've never seen any other canning jar that's not a Ball brand jar.
Yeah, but nobody calls them ball jars. They call them mason jars.
Ah, I got them.
Suck it, Charles Ball. So knowing this kind of progressed and took off, and then it wasn't until the early 1900s that the Ball brothers became a monopoly, and they developed the idea of the metal lid that permanently attached.
Mhm.
So like the tin cans that we know.
Yeah.
That wasn't until the early 1910s, but it was at that point that people in America were fairly self-sufficient with the ways that they like gathered and prepared their food. And the industry started to take off, and they had to create essentially an early version of the Food and Drug Administration because people didn't trust canned food.
I mean, I wouldn't. It
So
seems
other
crazy,
companies
right?
essentially were like, hey, we canned this food for you. Everybody can eat. We've pretty much solved at least national hunger in a way. And they were like, yeah, whatever,
Yeah.
Uncle Sam. And so they had to create a group to make sure that these things were safe for human consumption because people weren't buying them.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I would think, okay, you're taking a food that goes bad in a couple hours on the shelf and putting it in a can and telling me it's going to last for weeks, months, even
Years.
years. Yeah, no.
Do you
Not so
understand?
much.
So like we have these expiration dates on these canned foods. That's not an expiration date. That's the suggested date for when the food will still taste the way they intend it to taste.
So how far beyond the expiration date is it edible without, making you sick?
Most things are decades.
Wow.
So over the course of time, from that date of expiration, it is expected that soon after the color of the food will change, but you've already killed off any bacteria or potential growth of bacteria. So you can eat it. It might not taste as good, but it still has all the same nutritional value that it had had the day it was canned.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And that sort of goes the same for milk, but not as long, obviously, because for anybody who's ever left milk somewhere for too long, it separates and it smells and looks terrible. But the sell-by date, you can still drink that without smelling anything weird or doing anything for about 7 to 10 days. But pasteurization of milk prevents the spread of bacteria and growth of bacteria.
Makes sense. Should we caveat this and say, like, if we're not liable for anyone getting sick for eating green beans that have been on the shelf for 2 years?
I don't think that we would be liable for that at all, because you can eat green beans that are sealed in a can. You have to check the can. If there's any perforations of the can, don't eat it.
Makes sense.
Even those companies would say the same thing. It's like a best by date. You don't see very many things that say this expires by.
Or a sell by date is the other one that gets you. Because like that's literally just sell by, not it's bad by.
So want to hear another weird thing about pasteurized milk, though?
I do.
So it's not like pasture, like cows in a pasture. It was invented by a guy named Louis Pasteur.
Yeah, I actually knew that.
That's super. That's like for my entire childhood, I was like, "Oh, pasture, that makes sense."
It's been pasteurized. Means they just rubbed it in the dirt for a while, rolled it across the ground. Pasteurized.
Man, milk caused so many bad diseases, though.
And we're still drinking it.
Listeria, typhoid fever, tuberculosis, diphtheria, and tuberculosis.
Oh my God.
Like, why were we drinking this?
Maybe the people who are lactose intolerant are the ones that are going to survive. That's why that gene is still happening. They've survived because they haven't drank it. So let's pull this back to the theme of today, which is hot dogs.
Hot dogs?
Hot dogs. Yeah, take a hot dog, put some onions on it, a little mustard. I don't know what accent that is. Give me a Chicago Russian accent.
Well, I think that there's I want to get them their hot dogs, and I want to go to the Kremlin. Da bears. Get it? Da, because Russian. Da. Bears because Russian.
I don't know where this show's going. Anyway, hot dogs.
We lasted a long time. 2 episodes, everybody. Thank you very much.
Wrapping it up. Thank you, everyone. It's been fun. Did you know, close to Russia, not exactly, but the word Frankfurter, as you might expect, comes from Frankfurt, Germany. That's where hot dogs and pork sausages originated. And these sausages were called Frankfurter Würstchen. And I definitely butchered that. I don't want to hear it. Since the 13th century, they were making these sausages and giving them to people in the imperial coronations. The coronation of Maximilian II, Holy Roman Emperor.
Wait, like at the coronation of
they were serving dogs.
They were handing people hot dogs.
They were tossing out hot dogs, throwing them out at the crowd. Everyone loves them.
Get your hot dogs here. Get your hot dogs.
And the term Wiener, as we know it, refers to Vienna, Austria. German, Wien. Home to a sausage made of a mixture of pork and beef. We're talking about 18th, 19th century. There was a butcher who is said to have brought the Frankfurter Würstchen to Vienna, where he added beef to the mixture and simply called it a Frankfurter.
Wow.
Yeah, so a little bit of background on where your dog's coming from. And then once they got to the U.S., we just dropped all that and just called them hot dogs. Huh. And what's weird to me, though, and this is one of my favorite things I learned, is that it's not clear who began serving hot dogs and rolls. Because
whoa.
Oh,
they
yeah.
were doing this before there were rolls?
Oh, yeah. The dog came very early on. We're talking 13th, 14th century. And the roll didn't come around until about 1880.
Again, why are all these developments happening in the 1800s?
Only took them about 500 years to figure out.
We're better than this, humanity. We are better than this.
So here's the story, all right? German immigrant named Schwanger. from Frankfurt allegedly pioneered the practice of putting a hot dog in a bun. He was selling his hot dogs out of his cart, and he was selling them alongside an included glove.
I put my dog in a glove, a dog in a glove, babe.
He was giving out gloves with hot dogs to his customers so that they would not burn their hands. I mean,
I wish you guys could see the visualization in my head about how this worked out. Somebody goes like, "Hey, do you want one of these hot dogs? They're really good. I had one last week." And they're like, "Yeah, sure. What is it?" And he goes, "Well, just eat one." And he hands him the hot dog with the glove. And they kind of stand there looking at each other for 5 to 10 seconds. He kind of nods in approval to take the glove, and he just walks away with the glove.
In a non-verbal agreement to bring it back, I guess, because that was what they did. He expected people to bring the glove back.
What was this guy's name?
It was Frank Schwanger. And this is actually in the American Midwest. He was an immigrant from Frankfurt, so he's bringing his wieners over.
So Frank Schwanger goes to his wife and he says, "Babe,
we got problems
in all these fucking gloves. Why? What am I supposed to do here? I can't keep buying gloves. I'm selling these hot dogs for 2 cents, but the gloves cost me 25 cents." And they just keep taking all of them. And she says, "Why don't you just put it in a roll?"
Yeah, literally.
He thinks, "Oh, why didn't I think of that?"
It was literally his wife's idea.
So why were all these people buying these hot dogs if they weren't coming with anything but a glove?
I don't understand. I don't understand, because I can't imagine that they had mustard as we know it today, or ketchup, or whatever else you might put on a hot dog.
So you're essentially eating a plain hot dog like a 5-year-old.
With a glove. Just
you're like palming
picture.
it. You don't know how to use your fingertips yet, so you're just palming it.
Just so great. It's so great. So there you have it. Hot dogs in a roll because of Mrs. Freischwanger.
You know what? I can't fault them. Hot dogs are delicious.
They're pretty good.
As are most processed foods, and that's probably why we keep coming back to them.
I think so. They have such a staple in American culture. They're so deeply ingrained. Baseball? Come on. Baseball and a dog?
Classic. 4th of July. Labor Day.
Labor Day.
Tuesdays. Would you like to know why processed foods taste so delicious, though?
I would. Tell me.
Which is probably why people would have eaten this with a glove.
Because it doesn't even need the bun to be delicious. It stands on its own. And
it's because of the Maillard process.
A duck process?
So the Maillard process, also known as the Maillard reaction, also known as the Browning reaction.
Oh.
Yeah.
So whose reaction is it? Maillard?
Mr. Maillard? I don't know. He must be a duck.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So the Maillard reaction produces flavor and aroma during the cooking process, and it's used in almost everything in the baking industry. Literally everything. There are like papers written about this.
Okay.
And so it started off as a fairly just like matter of fact scientific thing. Like when you cook things, you change the atomic or the molecular structure of like sugars and fats. Mm-hmm. So each thing produces a very signature smell, which also affects the taste. And so when you cook things that are processed, you are already, well, when you cook things in general, you're processing food.
Yeah, makes sense.
But for specific things, and companies have caught on to this, you can manipulate it to smell and taste a certain way based on how you process it or cook it. And so that's what makes steak smell like steak, and bread smell like bread, and pasta taste the way you want pasta to taste. And it wasn't until people started to figure out how to prepare pasta, how good pasta could be, because it wasn't as popular of a thing for people to be eating for a long time until it was kind of spread across America. And it wasn't for a long time, apparently, which is interesting to me because pasta is like a meme in America now.
Right. I just want to say, by the way, it's very impressive how we've managed to take something that takes forever to make and is very difficult to make, put it in a box, charge 99 cents, and have it taste pretty close to the real thing.
That's food processing, Daniel.
Ah.
Yeah, that's the benefit of food processing. That's the intended result of food processing. It's to preserve things that we would normally eat and make them last longer. You're one, saving time for other people, and you're being able to establish like a standard baseline of available food for people. And so while pasta used to take forever and you couldn't produce that much, now because of food processing, we can produce a ton of pasta. It's shelf stable and it costs virtually nothing. Canned corn is the same thing. Canned beans are the same thing. Yeah, but the downside is Doritos, Totino's pizza rolls.
Oh, delicious.
Slim Jims.
Hell yeah, brother.
Like sodas.
Yes.
All of these things that we have decided, like, and that goes along with the Maillard effect too, right? Like we have created these things to smell and taste a certain way because we understand the science behind it. And people associate that with good. And they're more likely to come back and get it because, one, it's convenient. It lasts. It's cheap. And the science is there to back it up that it's going to, like, you're going to come back to that.
Yeah. And
those
actually,
are the downsides.
Another downside, there was a study, the American Institute for Cancer Research found that consuming one daily 50-gram serving of processed meat, so that's literally one hot dog, increases the long-term risk of colorectal cancer by 20%.
Which is a massive problem in America.
Yeah. Eating a hot dog every day would increase the probability of contracting colorectal cancer from 5.8% to 7%.
That's crazy. Bacon is one of those things that is a processed food that they say, like, don't eat it. Stop eating that because it's such a big part of American culture. Mm-hmm. The amount of nitrates in bacon are like just really, really unhealthy for you, but it tastes so
good.
I'm probably going to get colorectal cancer from it.
Probably. Is it going to be worth it? Probably.
What, am I going to eat a granola bar?
Hell no.
No. Granola bars
here.
are also processed foods.
Yeah.
They're also full of added sugars. So those digest really quickly, right? When you eat things like that, they digest quickly, but they're not good for you because you're not actually working off that kind of energy. And so your body is producing too much insulin, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Sounds right.
Is that what leads to type 2 diabetes, by the way? Like your body produces too much insulin, so then your pancreas can't keep up after a while?
I thought it was a deficiency where you can't produce enough insulin. That's why you have to take the shots.
That makes sense. Yeah. You can't produce enough insulin.
Yeah.
But yeah, like even granola bars, flavored nuts. Apparently flavored nuts are not good for you. Do not eat flavored nuts. I found this 3 places in my research is that flavored nuts are not great.
Really? Is it just the flavoring that they use? The
flavorings that they use are all sugary or too much salt, or they have a bunch of additives in them to make them taste better based on however their process is. And so you can do your own at home if you wanted to and make them significantly healthier.
Yeah.
I'm one to talk. I'm fat. Like, I don't know why I'm talking to you guys about processed foods. Come on.
In
my old age, I'm becoming more aware.
More woke.
Additionally, everybody's got to get on the same level of you as homemade popcorn because microwave popcorn is really not great.
So bad for you.
The things that they put inside those are really, really bad. Perfluoroalkylates are just one class of a chemical found in microwave popcorn bags, not just on the popcorn, but in the bags.
Really?
Yeah.
Aren't there like carcinogens on the bag as well, or like in the butter flavoring?
Yep.
Yeah, it's really not good.
Yeah, imitation butter flavoring is terrible. If you if you think butter's bad for you,
try the fake stuff.
Dried fruits, if you dry your own fruits, they are very good. If you have dried fruits in a bag, chances are they have added something so that things don't congeal together, and those things are really bad for you.
Makes
and
sense.
These are processing procedures so that food will last longer and be more appetizing when you open the bag.
Yikes.
Yeah. So while they have a lot of fiber, vitamins, and minerals, and yeah, sure, they're still going to be better than Skittles, you're not doing yourselves any favors by just buying things that are convenient. But that's kind of what the market is pushing toward, right? Like, eat healthy, it's going to be a little bit more and will help you. But they don't tell you that they're putting plastic particles in your food or sawdust around your shredded cheese because you don't want to shred your own cheese.
So the takeaway here is that literally everything we eat is processed.
Yeah. Again, it's like 70% of everything that we eat. But if you're mindful of those things, it doesn't have to be a do or die situation. If you're mindful of the things that you're putting in your body, and I think we could all benefit from this, right? Like, it seems like a crunchy granola thing to be so mindful of the things that you're putting in your body. But now, for me specifically, right? Like, I used to be pretty thin in high school, and now I'm 100 pounds heavier than I was in high school.
Damn. When you put it like that, I mean, that's a lot.
12 years, 100 pounds.
Wow.
Like, I'm not living healthily, and I can try to live healthily. And because I've been like thinking about and being more mindful of the things that I'm putting in my body, I'm going to make these changes or start to make changes. I don't expect that I'm just going to start eating healthily all the time. Right.
Yeah.
But this last week we had vegetarian chili 3 times. I ate healthily for dinner up until my birthday. And like, I felt really good. I felt much better. I didn't have any sodas. I drank water every single day. I didn't even drink coffee this week. It felt pretty damn good. I stopped smoking. That was probably a really big thing. Understanding the things that we are putting inside of ourselves is key to being happier, being healthier, not just being tired when you get home, not being tired when you wake up. These little changes can lead to bigger results.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and
I'm still going to eat a hot dog.
Oh, of course. Hell yeah. I mean, we have to, because it's the American way. And if you don't, you're un-American and you're going to Guantanamo. I was just going to say that my wife tried a sugar cleanse, and I don't recommend cleanses necessarily, because I think one of the things that you should think about is not making it a diet or like a short-term thing. What you essentially want to do is change your lifestyle, like change your habits. And so just doing a diet for a week or 2 weeks isn't necessarily going to get you there, because as soon as you come off that diet, you're like, oh, I can eat sugar again, so I'm just going to eat everything. And so you kind of lose all the progress that you've gained. But one of the things I will say, and that she actually saw some benefits from, was when she stopped eating so many processed foods, she realized that blueberries and strawberries and other types of fruit are so sweet by themselves, but our taste buds are so conditioned to have like cookies and ice cream and everything that is so loaded with sugar that it dulls the taste of everything else. And so when she cut that out and realized, oh, I'm just going to have fruit as my dessert, at first it sucked and her body really wanted the sugar. But after she was on this track for a couple weeks, she realized that the tastes of things change because we've conditioned ourselves to want stuff that is just so obscenely sugary for us. That we shouldn't have it. And it also affects things like our teeth. Like, our teeth are not meant to eat that kind of sugar. That's why we have cavities. That's why, we have all these problems that we didn't have years ago, because we are eating these things that are not a typical human diet. Does that make sense?
I've been trying to focus a little harder on just eating fruits when I want something sweet. I have a huge sweet tooth.
Yeah.
I've always had a big sweet tooth. And when I played 3 sports and I was in drama club and doing all these things, it didn't matter. I'm 30 now and I live a pretty sedentary life.
As most 30-year-olds do.
I need to be able to kind of do what I can where I can to feel better. Apple season's coming up. I love apple season because apples from the area that were picked like less than 24 hours ago taste 10 times better than the apples you'll find in a grocery store.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I had a Honeycrisp apple yesterday. That was probably the best thing I've had all week. And I ate a lot of really good food this week.
It's so much better when you can go to a farmer's market or someplace near you and get like locally grown stuff. Apples, so especially, like you said, we go out and get Honeycrisp and a couple different types of apples, and they're just so good, and they just blow the pants off of anything you can get in the supermarket. Like, taste that next to a Red Delicious. Are you kidding me? There's no flavor. Oh my God. They're like cardboard.
Nothing. There's nothing.
It's insane. And like it's just, I think they're bred specifically for looks and not for taste. Because they just, and the shape of them, it's just like so unnatural. Like, it just doesn't feel right when you're eating one of those.
Yeah. And like, I actually think that like apples seem to get smaller the more they're mass produced. Whereas like if you go to some of the older orchards that are around where Dan and I grew up, they are massive apples.
Massive.
But these trees are 150 years old. Well, the orchard is, not the trees. Apple trees don't actually last that long. Well, actually, maybe they do. Jamie, let us know. I know some apple trees do not last that long. But yeah, I feel like we talked a lot about stuff.
Yeah, I think if you learn anything from this podcast, it's that, there's a lot of crap out there. There's a lot of really disgusting things in hot dogs. It doesn't make them any less delicious. But it's also just be mindful. I think that's the takeaway. It's just
also canning in America. Am I right?
Yeah. What is that about? Come on.
I bet you there's some ISO standards based on canning.
I bet there are. And I bet we'll have to cover them in another episode.
Bam, bam, bam. This has been Dive. I hope you enjoyed your episode. Like and subscribe. Tweet us at HDDive. Email us at hotdropdive@gmail.com. We'll see you next week.